Hey, Patch! Wake up! Hey, wake up, you missed this show, huh?
Y a-t-il perdu connaissance ou fait un overdose?
Montreal's brown haze loomed in the distance that was closing in as the bus Patch was on rumbled down the highway that had become an autoroute when they crossed into Quebec. Under his leather motorcycle jacket he wore a Clash t-shirt, and his black jeans were rolled up to the top of his army surplus combat boots. Blue and orange streaks of colour lit up his matted hair. Or at least, lit up what was left of his hair. The emergency ward nurses had shaved chunks of his head so they could stitch up his scalp. This needed doing after Hector and 8-Ball broke a bottle over Patch's head. The bottle was nothing compared to what they did with the brick, which is why Patch didn't have all of his teeth. In the reflection of the bus window, he saw the stitches across his upper and lower lips, as well as those on his forehead that were courtesy of Hector's hockey stick. Patch thought it could have been worse. A few hours in the hospital sorted everything out, but on the way back downtown to their squat, Patch bumped into Hector on Preston Street. What happened there was part of the reason Patch was on a bus out of town. That, and he had won tickets to the Dead Kennedys concert by calling in to J.D. and Michelle's CFUO radio show. Patch put his book aside and gazed past the bus window, looking down at the deep blue of Lac de Montagne as they crossed the bridge onto the island of Montreal. Across the water, the Laurentians were rolling up out of the farm plains of the Ottawa Valley, with some of their rounded peaks high enough to be called mountains. Montreal itself soon rose before them, its lopsided and lumpy green cap safely encircled by the concrete grey stockade walls of the city skyline. It sat proudly plumed with a gigantic holy cross calling out to a higher order, where now a feather might be more appropriate. The bus left a long stretch of factory-bounded road, motoring along the rising and falling Spaghetti Junction flyovers that led to different parts of the city and the island. Sprawling urban vistas came into view and then vanished as the bus followed the asphalt threads and wove its way into the city's concrete fabric. Huge stone churches sprouted across the horizon, one seeming cathedral per neighborhood in this no longer as devout city of God. Sodom and Gomorrah and Gotham, all rolled into one, according to some modern-day followers of St. Augustine, the one-time Bishop of Hippo and overseer of the temporal world, who now seemed to be looking the other way, picking his nose. Urban glimpses suddenly ended for some as their asphalt thread skirted city traffic by diving down and tunneling under it via the Ville-Marie Expressway. Others lost their view to the sunken roadway of scrambling cars and trumpeting horns otherwise known as the Daiquiri. When Patch's bus left the roller coaster roadways, he marveled at the mixture of architectures. Glass and steel towers stood tall and proud, strutting their modernity and mocking what might be called the dull facades of older, squat stone buildings that cowered in their pristine reflections. Coming to a stoplight, the bus idled as Patch watched the streaming throng on the sidewalk, bustling with people in the late afternoon rush, dashing off to buses or metros or cars, and their hectic journey to the so-called safety of the ever-expanding suburbs. They were all oblivious to the theological ranting of two Manic Street preachers who were hassling each other for a change, the one with the placard reading, "The end is near," being denounced by the one with the placard reading, "The end is here." The driver shifted gears when the light changed, and they moved slowly in the stop-and-go traffic of rush hour. Anxious and impatient drivers were leaning on horns and shouting out of their windows at the seeming randomness of it all. 2 hours to get to Montreal, then another 45 minutes just to snake through its concrete canyons until they pulled onto Rue Saint-Whoever and slid into the bus station. Patch got off and looked around, pleased to find that the roller rink he was looking for was right across the street.
Hey, Patch! I said wake up, you'll miss the concert!
Patch pictured himself on a boat on a river of wheat that was growing thin. The jagged stumps of tangerine trees on the shore poked into a boiling marmalade sky of shifting patterns, now saying this, now saying that. The slipstream they were on led off in the distance to a large archway of misty letters reading,
"Abandon hope, all ye who enter."
Someone was calling, but Patch couldn't hear as he watched the two shadowy cloaked figures at the front of the boat, their voices inaudible beneath the rolling thunder. The two came into clear view with the sheet-teeth and forked lightning that was erupting, one larger than the other, with the metal of his Roman legionnaire's uniform clunking beneath his cloak. He was beckoning Patch with underworld words that rove above the clamorous din, claiming a nuclear error, that engines weren't running, and a new ice age was coming now that the atomic sun was starting to zoom in. Patch should have been frightened, but tonight he had no fear, as someone was calling, and he felt the hard smack of a boot kicking his thigh. Focusing on the rundown wooden strips of the roller rink floor when he opened his eyes, Pat got up quickly when he realized he was face down in a pool of his own drool. He shook his head, rubbed his eyes with his palms, and wiped his mouth with his sleeve. Then he jumped up, unsteady. "What?" he said as he fought the spins.
Ooh, we thought maybe you were dead, huh?
Said his old friend Pip. Her huge and curled pigtails bobbed in the din of the concert, and she wore multicolored stockings that rode up from her black army boots to just beneath her pinned miniskirt. Her t-shirt was ripped, and she still had her Kiss Army button on her vest.
Hey, your face, it looked like shit, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet the other guy, he looked worse, huh?
Which made Patch think of the popping sound Hector's crotch made when he kneed him on Preston Street. Pip jokingly elbowed him in the belly, and Patch promptly threw up the better part of a bottle of wine and 2 undigested pills. He leaned forward to snatch the pills up, but misstepped and crunched them with his boot.
Ooh, shit, man. Sorry about that, huh? This is Mo.
She said, referring to the pink-haired Amazon she was hanging off of.
She shake me all night long, if you know what I mean, huh?
Patch knew what she meant, but couldn't believe that Mo had a monosyllabic name. He figured that her booming stature and fishnet stockings required something with more grandeur, maybe with a Vander thrown in for good measure. Something along the lines of Dame Alexi Vander Big Boobies. Not plain old Mo. Pip's vest was covered. Pip's vest covered her shirt in such a way that he couldn't make out what it said. With Mo, there was no mistaking what her shirt said. Glaring out to the world from behind an undone corset in huge pink bubble letters, 1 word per line, it read,
"What boys do."
At her glare, he thought better than to say anything about it, so he just said hello.
Cochon.
Was Mo's quick reply.
No, Patch is a good guy. He's the one I told you put me up when I got stranded in Ottawa.
Mo responded by giving her a big kiss and giving Patch the finger. Pip winked again at Adam as Mo pulled her back towards the crowd in front of the stage.
Bien.
Patch followed, unsteady steps at first, and watched them disappear into the mass of people that were getting to it and at it before the stage. He paused in front of the heaving mosh pit to take it all in. He was taunted by the slightly deranged psychosis of sound coming from up on stage, and he entered the crowded bustle when whatever chemicals that were left in him coursed through his bloodstream and kicked into a flood tide, plugging his pharmaceutical patch cord into the rising pulse of the rhythm guitar just as it was hooking up with the thundering bass line that was stalking the rumbling crowd, egging him and then on to further heights with the help of a debauched lead guitar and a tremulous howl of the swaying singer, all barely held together by the drummer's storm-ridden backbeat. Patch dove in and swam through the excited pool of thrashing, dancing salmon as the mass rose to greater fits of passion, greater jumping and bumping, humping into each other's writhing limbs, all mumbo-jumbo in a raucous tide of humanity that was swaying back and forth and up and down and in and out of each other with colored stage lights flashing them and frenzied faces blinking before his eyes and snapshots of bubbling sweat and lustful joy amid hanging and swaying clouds of smoke. He swam deeper and deeper until he came alongside the stage, where he climbed up, dancing with the singer and the wild blaring cacophony of noise and adding more smarts to the fire of an already flame-ridden night. He ran around the stage and built up some speed for a stage dive, jumping up, spread-eagled, onto the rough waves of the crowd, arms raised to catch him, passing him along, surfing him back, out of harm's way until there was space for him to land safely on his feet and continue on.
But he landed on his head and woke up on a hard wooden bench in a park just off of Dorchester Street. The mid-morning sun was peering in hard through his hangover-swollen eyelids. He was fully dressed, except for both of his socks and 1 boot. He sat up and looked around, noticing that the statue of Sir John A. seemed to be looking down his nose at him. Then he got up and crossed the park to a metro station, where he used the toilet, rinsed his face, and threw away his remaining boot. It was a nice sunny day, he figured, and walking around with only 1 boot on would make him feel like a right knob. Checking his pockets, he found that he still had some money, as well as a ripped piece of paper that had an address scrawled on it. That was as good as anything to go on, so he went to a Greasy Spoon for a coffee and asked the waitress where the street was, all the while wondering who it was.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Bang. That's the end of that scene.